But a big reality that we don't always think about is girls get trafficked on their way to an open border.
Yeah. Of trafficking victims, 90% of them will engage with a healthcare worker. And so one of the big pushes they're doing right now is how to better equip and train healthcare workers.
Yeah. Quick Trip is a safe haven.
Yeah.
So that means you can go in, or if you're in trouble at all, you can go into a clerk and you can say, I'm in trouble, I need help. And they can actually lock you in a room that they can't open, only the police can open. This is the Disruptive Hope Podcast. Hope sees, hope engages, hope belongs, hope builds. Hope disrupts the narrative of despair, and in the tension of holding both sorrow and joy, we invite hope to redefine the lens through which we see and interact with the world. Embrace the challenge and become an agent of hope in unlikely places. Welcome to the Disruptive Hope Podcast.
Hi, and welcome back to Season 2 of the Human Trafficking 101 podcast. We are so excited you joined us today. I am one of your hosts. I'm Christie Anthony, and I'm here with the lovely Hannah Wehunt.
Hello.
We are excited for another great conversation. If you tuned into the last episode, you heard we're doing something a little different this season. We are going with some shorter, more casual form content. You know, one of the things that Hannah and I've noticed a lot is we get asked a ton of questions around this topic. It's something that we talk about regularly. There's lots of it changing in the news right now. And so, you know, we wanted to have this as more of a conversational, what's going on, some of the day-to-day conversations that we're having. If you tuned in last time, you heard some of that, and we're excited for our conversation today. Yeah. I'm very excited for the report that we're going to talk about. It's definitely fresh and new, and we're looking forward to today's conversation. So thanks for jumping in with us.
For sure. And today, you know, our headquarters are in Dallas-Fort Worth, so we're in Texas. And today we are going to be talking about a report specifically about Texas. But I don't want you to tune away if you're not in Texas, because a lot of things that we find in trafficking ring true, kind of no matter where trafficking is. There's obviously going to be differences, and each state is unique, each culture is unique because we work around the world. But there are some pretty consistent things that you can look at and see in a community what makes someone at risk of being trafficked. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about a report that was done in the state of Texas. So Texas is one of the highest ranking states in America for trafficking, which is such a bummer.
Yeah. And DFW is one of the leading areas for it.
DFW is one of the leading areas. So DFW is in the Texas Triangle. It's the DFW area, Houston and San Antonio. And kind of there's a couple of factors that make Texas such a hot spot for trafficking. The economic opportunities, that especially in that triangle, just the density. Oh my gosh, we all live here, and there are so many people moving here.
Traffic's a mess.
Traffic is a mess. Housing is a mess.
Yeah.
There's so many people moving here. There's so many people living here. And so the dense population, anywhere that there's dense population, it increases trafficking. The economic opportunities. It's also like a hot spot for sporting events. And we know sporting events drive trafficking, unfortunately. Festivals and concerts. All of those major functions, those major festivals that people come together, hotspot for trafficking. And it's very easily it's very easy for international travel in this area. And international travel also increases trafficking. So those are a few of the Texas Triangle, why that makes it a hot spot. Another big reality that Texas faces is we're a border. We're a border state. And, you know, there's been, over the last few years, a lot of talk about the border. I know you have had a lot of conversations around the border. Our border is now secure. It's been
getting
closed.
more secure.
Yeah. It's an ever-growing process. And that really does aid trafficking for a couple of reasons, which, jump in and speak to this, because I know that it's something that you're very passionate about as well. Of course, it makes it easier for people to bring victims over the border. But a big reality that we don't always think about is girls get trafficked on their way to an open border.
Yeah. that's a lot of what we've seen as SOS.
Yeah.
Is the girls en route to our southern border being trafficked. And we have quite a few that are finding hope and healing at rescue homes. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where I'm passionate about it, right? Is I have friends, I know young girls whose lives have been devastated in that pursuit for the southern border. And so I'm thankful that we are making changes. There's always more change that can be made, but securing borders does help protect children.
Yeah. Yeah. People, I think, we often think about how it affects us, right? So we think of people coming towards us. We don't really think about, okay, how are they going to actually do that? Mm-hmm. And that's where a lot of devastation happens in young girls' lives. So Texas being a border state makes it a hot spot for trafficking. And then that nice little I-35, which has the worst traffic, actually.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare to drive on. But it runs directly from the border out of the state up into the country. And it is just a highway for human trafficking. So those are kind of some of the reasons why Texas ranks so high in the trafficking space. But recently, there has been a huge push to really collaboratively work together to help secure children in Texas. And so I know that you got to be a part of some meetings where they talked about just some really interesting research. You want to walk us through some of the parts that you find?
Yeah, for sure. Let me start by talking about the group that did this, because I am huge fans of the group who did this. It's a group called Engage Together. Mm-hmm. It is out of Nashville, Tennessee. It's led by a woman named Ashley Chapman, which she has been a friend for a lot of years. She is an incredible advocate in the fight against human trafficking. She's a human rights attorney, and she's leading all of these cool initiatives to bring reform across a lot of spaces. Mm-hmm. But she runs something called Altus and Justice U. I've worked with a lot of their tools for a lot of years, and I'm continually amazed by the caliber of just the quality of the projects they do. Mm-hmm. And so while we're going to go through the report that they've just done, this is the initial findings. It's still being reviewed. There are going to be more versions of the report later. Mm-hmm. But if you're interested, they've gone and done this in a lot of metro areas. And so if you're listening from somewhere else in the nation and you're curious about what's going on, I would encourage you to check out their resources and see if they've done one of these studies in the region you live or maybe nearby. With the way that they do this, they are looking at DFW, and basically we have 3 anti-human trafficking coalitions here in North Texas. We've all come together working with a local foundation that's helping to sponsor this, and the Engage Together team, and they're doing a deep dive assessment. When they do this assessment, they actually do county assessments for the entire state of Texas. So right now they have available county by county everything, but that's
crazy. Like the amount of work, because it's such this people group, trying to get any data from this people group is so difficult because it's a migrant people group.
Well, really what they're looking at is basically they're doing an assessment of what's going on and where are the vulnerabilities. So I'm going to kind of take you through the report and how they do it. They're not studying trafficking survivors or victims in the area. What they're doing is they're doing kind of a lay of the land assessment. They're seeing what's available. And, one of the tools that the Engage Together team has that I use all the time when I'm talking to people, they have something they call the Freedom Wheel, and it kind of forms our framework when we talk about this. But basically the research scope, they've broken it into 5 areas, and they say these are the 5 areas that have to be addressed to truly address human trafficking inside of communities, right? Those 5 areas are prevention, so awareness, demand, vulnerability, identification through training and outreaches, exit, so intervention, temporary shelters, services, victim advocacy, restoration, so aftercare and reintegration, and then reforms, which would be legal, policy, and systems. And basically, they say that you need advocates in every space, and not every group will be in the same space, and that's why you need this collaborative approach. Yeah. And so what they've done is they've taken this Freedom Wheel in these 5 areas, and they've taken every county in the state of Texas, and they're going through and they're doing a comprehensive breakdown. They're using something called the Vulnerable Population Index. So they have all of these, very similar to what we've talked about with the CDC's
ACEs.
Yes, ACEs. Thank you. I was like, what's the acronym? I've got too many acronyms in this world.
Yeah, there's a lot of acronyms going, so we might pause and break a few things down. But
so ACEs are adverse childhood experiences, right? So these vulnerable population indexes are very, very similar to ACEs. And what it says is how many people are suffering from these things that make them vulnerable. Why are these vulnerabilities growing? And then who's doing something about these vulnerabilities? And basically, this is a data deep dive that they're doing all kinds of grassroots information, assessments, surveys across a large variety of things. And then they're pulling it into this Engage Together framework and saying, okay, these are now our recommendations. These are the areas where we see gaps. These are the areas that we see need to progress to address human trafficking. And so basically they're creating a knowledge bank to help people collaborate together to tackle trafficking.
I love that. Let's talk about the freedom wheel a little bit. So prevention, like if we look at that, that's kind of the initial one, right? That involves awareness and addressing what makes people vulnerable, right? So that's where you get into those ACEs, to those adverse childhood experiences, which are, lack of food and lack of stability at home, domestic violence, parents not being around, things like that. So you get into, that's in the prevention wheel, right? The addressing those needs.
It's in prevention and identification. Both.
And in identification. But they also have demand in there.
Yeah. That's a big one.
It's a big one. And it's one that people don't always hit on.
Yeah.
So we work in countries and hotspots for sex tourism. So for those of you who don't know, there is a global phenomenon of sex tourism where you can actually go and book tours to engage in this type of activities. And it can just devastate a community. It absolutely is a massive fuel for trafficking. And what we have found is one of the largest consumers of sex tourism are Westerners. And so the demand, it's a real thing that in Texas we have to look at and address.
For sure. I had a startling conversation. This is unpopular opinion, okay? I was talking to a law enforcement official last week who prosecutes child pornography cases. And we were just talking about the growing rate of child pornography. And he made the comment that he had seen a direct correlation between individuals who participate in open marriages and the consumption and abuse of child pornography and the abuse of minors. That he, as a secular law enforcement agency, is seeing this correlation. So I don't think we can underestimate demand and how all of it, how choices all come together to create situations that exploit vulnerable children.
Yeah, for sure. I think it is like, there are definitely groups talking about it out there, but it is a harder one for people to typically engage with because they don't want to. It's a messier side of it. But the reality is this exists because there's a demand for it.
For sure.
And so in engaging in those conversations and recognizing, man, it's the West that's by and large consuming this. It's devastating, but it is interesting that they've put it in there because it really is prevention. If we can help shut that down, shut down demand, we can help secure communities and children. So I just thought that was so interesting. I wanted to point that out, that was in there.
Yeah.
Because we don't always think of it as part of it. And it is part of it.
For
sure.
Know,
it's stocking food pantries is prevention and having honest, open conversations about pornography consumption is prevention.
Yeah.
And, the open marriage thing is so fascinating that is such a tie to it.
It was the first I had ever had that conversation, but it had been a trend in all of the cases he just worked. And I was like, that's startling.
It is startling. So, okay, I didn't mean to derail you. I just wanted to jump into that a little bit.
You're good. So this research is exhaustive. And I'm not going to by any means go into all of it because it's still changing. It's still growing. I just want to point out 2 or 3 things that I found really fascinating in having the conversation.
I love that.
One of those being that if you've never seen that freedom wheel, if you are at all interested in this topic, it is a great place to start with that. Just base level foundation understanding of how you go about tackling it and how all of it ties together, and knowing that not everybody's going to sit in all the spaces, right?
Yeah.
That it's going to take a collaborative approach. And I think that's the beauty of these coalitions is, okay, this is my area, this is your area. And as we work together, that we're able to see progress and change.
For sure. And we will link this whole report in the podcast
And it's
caption.
a website it's changing, right? This
Always,
this is the initial findings. They're going through, they're refining. We're inviting more organizations to participate. It will continue to, and more tools are being opened. So even when you go to the website, it'll say coming soon across some of them. So it's an ever evolving tool, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
But definitely worth checking out.
Yeah. It's kind of inviting people in and watching it from the grassroots process.
Yeah.
Which I do think people that aren't in the human trafficking, anti-human trafficking space all the time we get questions all the time.
Yeah.
How does this actually happen? How do you actually help reach and restore and reintegrate? And so it's a cool behind the scene peek at how this process actually works.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and you have to remember too, this is data. Data's only as good as you, provide inputs to it, and then how actionable it is. And so one of the things I love about this team is they're really working to make it actionable information.
That's awesome.
And so we can just continue to take the next step forward in securing communities. And it's a very community-based intervention level, which I think is awesome. We love grassroots. We see the importance of grassroots. Man, you need laws and policy and reform at a nationwide level that promote environments of healing and safety for children, but then you need grassroots organizations, boots on the ground, people engaged in the fight. And I think this is kind of the best of both worlds. So in there, you can see a county by county assessment. So depending on what county you live in, if you want to get in there and look, in the link, it's going to have a full county assessment, which is really cool. You can kind of see what's going on. And just remember, it's that catalyst of collaboration. So we're looking for problem solving and real change as a result of what we're seeing. But one of the things that I found most fascinating in a lot of the conversation we had is who are the players that are involved? And one of the big conversation points that we had last week, or almost 2 weeks ago now, was, what we know is true is that nonprofits are doing the heavy hitting here in DFW. There are significantly more nonprofits involved in the fight. And I think some of the beauty of this coalition is we're bringing alongside, universities and police forces and, different groups to participate in some of these conversations. But when you dig into the data, the findings are going to show that we do not have anywhere near enough churches involved in the fight against trafficking. Those numbers were so low. That's
crazy too, because this area is known. We are in the Bible Belt. You can't throw a stone and not hit a church. It is on every single corner. So it's crazy that they're not involved.
So the lady that was presenting these findings had run a statewide initiative on the East Coast for human anti-trafficking. And she stopped the room and brought it up because she was so startled by the findings of saying, we are sitting in the heart of the Bible Belt and I do not have enough churches involved in this fight against trafficking. Yeah. And so I appreciate that viewpoint of the church is vital in this, right? It's got to
it's the most connected network in this area, and it's a global connected network. It's vital.
And she pointed out, looking at the numbers, these are touching congregations whether we want to acknowledge it or not, right? Yeah. You're finding this inside of youth groups. You're finding this inside of, some of these environments. So we have to make a conscious choice to begin to empower people to address it and be part of the solution because the problem is there.
Yeah, to be able to engage and have proper conversations about it and know how to help.
Yeah.
How overwhelming is it to, a youth leader, as soon as they discover that this is, potentially happening? Overwhelming. Yeah. How do you help? What do you do? So I love that they're focusing on that needs to happen.
For sure. So we need more churches involved in it. We need more foundations and more businesses. Those were the 3 areas that she really highlighted as if we could increase these areas in DFW, we would see big strength and big lift, especially because we do have the nonprofit resources addressing it, but we don't have enough community support to really go after it for what the data is telling us the scope of the problem is. So it is going to be interesting to see as different versions and more information rolls out, but it was fascinating preliminary findings that I feel like is very actionable
Yeah.
and provides that rallying call of we need more people involved in this fight
For sure.
to bring freedom.
Well, it's interesting too, as you bring in more people and more sectors, you just kind of like get to, everyone brings such a unique perspective and everyone brings such a unique solution. So like, I think businesses might be like, I don't know how I would be involved in this. But one of my favorite things that a business does is Quick Trip is, and a lot of people don't know this, Quick Trip is a safe haven.
Yeah.
So that means if you are stopped at a Quick Trip and you are experiencing any type of violence, honestly, they'll take you. But if you're being trafficked, you can go in, or if you're in trouble at all, you can go into a clerk and you can say, I'm in trouble, I need help. And they can actually lock you in a room that they can't open, only the police can open. And so it immediately gets you protected away from whoever's trying to hurt you. And then it gets the police involved. And it's like such a simple solution.
Yeah.
And even not putting their employees at risk by actually making the doors completely unopenable unless you're law enforcement.
Yeah.
It's such a cool way that they've decided to get involved, recognizing that, so many Quick Trips are on I-35. So they saw, okay, wait, this is touching us. How do we make Quick Trip a little bit better? So there are a lot of cool companies doing stuff, businesses doing stuff that you wouldn't necessarily think, oh yeah, that would be helpful. And it's so helpful.
So Motel 6 is doing something similar where I sat into a presentation where they were talking about their anti-trafficking initiatives. Gosh, it's been like a year now.
Yeah.
But the guy that's over it has gone through and he's worked with the decor team, which this is going to sound crazy, but he's worked with the decor team and they've created regional decor.
Okay.
So basically what they've identified is because they're a motel and they tend to be cheaper and on major routes, that there's a lot of exploitation that can happen around those hotels. And so what they've done is through how they decorate the rooms, they're able to collaborate with law enforcement. And when photos are posted, they're able to go through and identify very quickly what area it is.
That's
to
crazy.
Aid law enforcement. I know, who would think it's like
brilliant.
so simple but brilliant.
It's so simple, but it's brilliant. And it's business leaders saying, you know what? I recognize that I'm a businessman. Like, I'm not running a nonprofit, but this affects my community, and there's something unique that I can do to help prevent it. It's so cool. And, who knows, as people listen and as people get a heart for trafficking victims, what other opportunities lies in businesses that we don't even know about yet.
Yeah. One of the things that they talked about in this presentation was the fact that they estimate that of trafficking victims, 90% of them will engage with a healthcare worker. And so one of the big pushes they're doing right now is how to better equip and train healthcare workers to respond, because they're seeing, okay, this is an area where if we can better equip healthcare workers on how to identify and what to do, that can be a great point of intervention. So I love all the innovation and the tools that are coming out right now.
Well, and there's definitely, so I actually have a close friend and she is a healthcare provider, and she had a trafficking victim come across her path, and she was an adult, and there's so many layers when a trafficking victim is an adult, right? When it's a kid, it's honestly much easier to help secure them and get them help. But there's layers. You got to prove in a lot of senses. And so she did her best to engage and help with her and get her the care she needed. But then she called me afterwards and she was like, hey, can we get dinner? Because she hadn't been trained in how to handle that. And she handled it so beautifully because she loves people and she can engage with it. And she did an excellent job. But even like the aftercare of these individuals, like how do they process this? How do they, navigate entering into such an intimate space where you really do see the brutalities? I think that's the part about the healthcare system, is it's so intimate. So you get to see the suffering on such a different level.
Yeah.
So training on okay, how do you address it and how do you do it? And then training on like, okay, how do you then process it? How do you then walk out and like walk through everything you just were a witness to? And I think it is an and both thing. We need a training on how you handle it, but also if you can't process it, if you can't get through it afterwards, then your brain's actually going to naturally shut it out. And so it's that and both of, okay, we're training you on what to do in that moment, and then we're also training you on how to preserve your soul when it's devastating.
Yeah.
And the intimacy that comes with being a healthcare provider and hearing things and seeing things on someone physically that just shouldn't be there. You know, it needs to be an and both, I think, teaching those things.
For sure. Well, and that's area that you've worked so closely in, right? Like hearing the stories and then also walking girls through that healing journey of being able to share their stories, and some of the residual
fallout of that.
That it does come at a personal cost, and how you take that time to cultivate your own soul.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's area that you have unique experience to be able to see and speak into. And at some point we should probably just unpack that. I don't know if you actually want to unpack that on a podcast.
I think it's so messy.
It's, I mean, all of this is
just messy. Yeah. But the reality is if you don't do and it is training too. And if you don't do that, man, trafficking prevention's hard in every sector. Anybody who jumps into this and engages in it, it's hard. And the reality is like people's bandwidth for it is normally pretty short. And that is totally understandable, right?
For sure.
It's totally understandable. But also we need individuals who can do the long haul. So what does that look like? You know, kind of embracing the reality of like there needs to be training on that side as well.
For sure.
So that all this good training that we're doing on this side can carry through for a long time.
Which honestly, if you have made it to this point in this podcast, I want to say congratulations, because I see you as, it's just like working out, right? Like you start with those 5 or 10 pound dumbbells, and over time you're able to work your way up. And so literally as you engage, as you deposit thought and resources and investigation and understanding in your arsenal, man, you're equipping yourself to be a catalyst in this fight against trafficking. So if you've hung with us this far, thank you. We are so proud of you. We're here in the middle of it with you, and we appreciate the endurance that you're building in this space. And we recognize that it's not easy, that it's not comfortable, that it's not, that it creates a tension, right? And one of the things Hannah and I talk about a lot is that in this space, it is a tension. Right? I cannot reconcile either way. And the more I wade into the space, the more I invite myself into the tension. And I think when you do that, you get to see these really beautiful moments of life transformation. While also anchored in the really hard moments of soul devastation. And it's that standing in the gap and holding attention and creating space for people and creating space for healing. And choosing to not numb yourself. You know, one of the things that I actually wrote in my show notes for this, because I think it's so important, right? This is information, and information is so good, but it is only as good as the action that you put it to. And so one of the things we say at SOS a lot is awareness without action leads to inoculation. That means if you're just going to sit there and you're just going to learn more and more about it, at some point, if you don't put that into action, you actually begin to numb yourself to it, because now you physically know about it, but we have to engage in it. Right? And so I would challenge you as you're learning about this to just find ways to put it into action, to love people well, to enter into the tension. You know, honestly, for a lot of us, it can be as simple as like being a mentor at your at a local elementary school, man.
Big deal.
Oh, such a big deal. We have so many of our team here who are mentors in local elementary schools, and the conversations they are having at real world levels. Same is true. Go volunteer in a youth group. Go volunteer in a Boys and Girls Club. Go volunteer at a rec center. Like there are opportunities all around us to engage in building safety and care into the next generation.
And it doesn't have to look like I think people can get so intimidated by this space, right? Because there is so much clinical to it.
Yeah.
And there are elements of this that you need expertise to be involved in. But the reality of volunteering with at-risk children in your community and just being a safe, kind, loving adult who's encouraging them, who's like seeing great qualities in them and calling it out, the impact of that on someone's life is massive.
Huge.
And that is something that literally all of us can do.
Absolutely.
You don't have to be an expert in any area to do that. We say a lot here that the best rescue happens before a child's ever abused. And so we are big in, reach and rehabilitation, but we are really big in the prevention space. Because if you can go in and help secure a kid before they ever get abused, what a home run that is.
Huge home run.
And so I love that you mentioned that of volunteering, be a mentor in your school, volunteer with a boys and girls group, because it really, really is that simple.
Yeah. Well, guys, we're sitting at the
simple.
start of summer. Go be part of a summer feeding program.
Yes.
Right? Go pack snack packs for
Yep.
these kids that aren't going to have meals that are
For sure.
in areas that they need to be secure, right?
Yeah.
Encourage kids to follow their intuition.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's some of those
Yes.
spaces of like, hey, if you have a a funny feeling around somebody, don't be around that person and I'm not going to force you. So there are thousands of little ways that we can put this into action. So I would just challenge you, if you're listening today, find a simple way to start putting things into action, to be a safe adult, to be an advocate for children around you. Because there's something we can all do.
For sure. I love that. Well, we are going to go ahead and link this report and link Engage Together website. As Christy mentioned, it's ever changing. So you can continually check back there and see kind of what they're doing and where they're engaging. And if you're not in Texas, if your state and your county are on there,
Hey, before she closes, because I can tell she's doing her wind down
I'm doing
rap.
my
I hear the
wind
tone in
down.
her voice. If you are around any anti-trafficking group, you probably already caught news of this, but we still want to celebrate it. Last week, the Take It Down Act was passed into law, which is going to help with photos that people don't want posted, with deep fakes, with AI. Basically, it's saying that, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they all have to pull it down within 48 hours of being reported. And that is a huge win
deal.
in this space. So we just
deal.
wanted to say how excited we were
Yeah.
and just acknowledge that that's big reform.
That's huge reform.
So
The online space has traditionally been a tank for this. So the fact that there's safety there now, huge.
for sure. Thanks for letting me fit that celebration. You can do your wind down now.
No, it was awesome. Thank you guys for joining us and hanging with us as we talk through data and reports. And
That's some deep stuff this time.
It is some deep stuff this
Data
time.
and human trafficking.
That's a lot. As always, if you have any questions, you can reach out, leave in the comments, send us a DM. We would love to have this conversation with you. So thanks for joining
being
us.
part. Appreciate you guys.